Hello, my name is Wycliffe Gordon, and I am the 2010 Artist in Residence for the Satchmo Armstrong Jazz Camp in New Orleans. Well, I grew up listening to jazz, and my first introduction to jazz was on record. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, so the extent of my musical upbringing had a lot to do with church, and my father played classical music. So the first time I heard jazz was on a compilation that I think Columbia put out. And it was an anthology of jazz from the early slave chants to the modern jazz of that time, which was either Sonny Rollins Quartet or the Dizzy Gillespie Big Band. But of all the sides that I heard, from ragtime to the big band, to even what they call modern jazz during that time, the music that stuck with me was the music of New Orleans. And it was New Orleans jazz. And the particular tune that I really fell in love with, or that I would listen to over and over, was called The Keyhole Blues by Louis Armstrong. Or at least that was the first one that I tried to learn. I heard When the Saints Go Marching In from playing and being in church, but there was a recording of a New Orleans band. I can't think of the name of the group. It seemed like it was a brass band that played that. So I learned the trombone solo on that. So when we played When the Saints Go Marching In school, the other kids thought it was hip that I made it my own solo, but I was just transcribing from the record. And even though I didn't know the word transcribe at that time, I was 12, 13 years old, there was something about the music of New Orleans that just it felt good. I didn't know the terminology to describe it, whether it was the exuberance or just the spirit of the music. I just knew that I liked it. And I was at 13 years old, they had popular groups like Kool and the Gang. That's when electronic music had become, really popular. But so I'd find myself in my garage listening to that CD by myself often, and my friends used to say, yeah, he's listening to that deep jazz. That's what they call the deep jazz. But it was traditional jazz, and again, even though I didn't know all of these terminologies, I just fell in love with the spirit of the New Orleans music. So with things that I become, as I got older, as I come into knowing like counterpoint and things that composers would write into classical music, was just a natural part of how New Orleans musicians interacted with each other. Like the difference between, like, the trumpet would play the melody, the trombone would play kind of a tailgate part, probably close to the tuba down in the lower register, and the clarinet playing like an obligato part. I knew none of that. I just knew that when I heard the music, I liked it. So I listened to it over and over and over. And then, from that compilation, when I first began to make money and start to buy records, the first records I would buy, well, cassettes actually, would be those of Louis Armstrong, Hot Fives and Sevens, Louis Armstrong and the All-Stars. And, I fell in love with the music. Something about it just felt right. Something about it just felt good. So unlike a lot of my contemporaries that came into jazz that's in my, generation, they started with bebop. For me, it was the music of New Orleans, and then I eventually ventured into the other forms of music. But it's always been a part of me, and it's always, I've always had some kind of a love affair with the city through the music. Well, I think it's a great thing to have a jazz camp named after Louis Armstrong, because most people in the world know him as a musician, but what he did for the world at large was much greater than music. The music that he made, and the life that he lived, it broke barriers that existed in the United States. And even though he had to live through some of those hard times, and you can catch Pops in an interview where he said to the press, I think he got busted in Chicago smoking weed in the car, and he said, well, this was marijuana. It's an insulator against the pains of racism. And even though that was what he said about that instance, he did live in those times. So what he meant to music is unparalleled, but what he meant to the world at large is, it's just unbelievable how when you go to, you witness a show or performance, and I didn't get a chance to do so because I was only, 4 or 5 years old when Pops left us, but to even watch it on video or YouTube or something, just the performance and just the looks on the faces of the people, the the way that his music would just move people, how it would move people that are apart and towards coming together. Like one of my favorite clips is of Pops singing Black and Blue, but he's doing it in Africa when he went on the State Department tour. And just weeks before, those two countries were at war, killing each other. Now they're sitting side by side, listening to a concert given by Louis Armstrong. If that's the kind of power that music has, and particularly the music of Louis Armstrong, you know, how come we don't have someone like Louis Armstrong for president? If you can stop a war, I mean, you know, it's just pretty powerful. And I mean, you know, great musician, but what he did went far beyond music. And it was just, so, you know, there should be streets named after this. It should be a Louis Armstrong holiday, I think. Maybe I'll start a petition to do that. But to have a camp named after him, well, yeah, that's great. In New Orleans, that's wonderful. And I can see in the future maybe camps popping up around, and they put Louis Armstrong's name on the camp just as a dedication to what he meant to the world of music, if it's a music camp, but just to the world at large, which goes far beyond music. Being here at this camp for the first time, the Louis Armstrong camp, this is my third day. What's my fourth day? Let's see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I've been here for a few days, and it's been great to see the growth. And I mean, it's just like being different places in the world when you're dealing with people and you're dealing with these young people. You have some that are a little shy, some that are very exuberant and that are ready to just, you know, take on the musical challenges. And, you know, but being here in New Orleans, particularly for me, I'm a little biased because I get a chance to be around the people of New Orleans, and I get a chance to be around get the food and the flavor of the city, and, you know, different things that I like to partake in while coming into New Orleans. That, you know, I went to a performance the other night, and Kermit Ruffin said, "Only in New Orleans." And I've been to many places in the world, and there is only one place like this. And so to be here and work with the kids at the camp, it's been great, particularly to work with colleagues of mine that I worked with years ago, like Kent, Marlon Jordan. My first time working with the dad, Kid Jordan, and then getting a chance to meet some more of the musicians that live here, that are from here, and that are giving of their talent and their time, like Maynard Chatters. When I first met him, I think because of my flight coming in, I didn't recognize who he was. And of course I do know who he is, and about his legacy in New Orleans and playing with he invited me to go to Preservation Hall. And you know, it's just, there's just a great rich legacy here. So to be a part of that and while participating in this camp is great. And the kids, you know, they're kids. You have to sometimes you have to egg some on, the others you have to tell them hold back. But it's a great mixture, and you know, you have kids from all over the United States, and you know, it's been wonderful. I look forward to doing it again, and even coming back, even if I'm not working, just to hang in New Orleans for a little bit. And it seems that the kids that have gone through the camp and come back, some of the alumni, they have a really good rapport with the faculty, and you know, they're kind of like leaders, which is what they should be for the young ones that are here now. And to witness that old school teaching of Kid Jordan, that's something else. I like that. I love that. I mean, he's just straight to it, and I don't see that often anymore, because in school situations you have to be careful about how you look at kids nowadays. Things have changed so much. So to see somebody to deal with teaching and making, and it's all in love, and which is what it should be. And it reminded me of some of my teachers when I was much younger, and to see that, I'm like, well, good. You know, that's something that I believe in, and I believe that he's going to put the kids, they're getting something they're getting something that they'll never forget. And even though it may seem a little rough at first, I didn't think so at all. But he's just getting them straight, and that's how he knows, and that's what he has. All his kids are great musicians, so it's not like he's figuring this out. He knows what he's doing, and he's a great artistic director, I think, if that's his title. Well, I think incorporating swing dance for the dancers and or for the musicians is one of the greatest things that you can do. That can be at a camp, should be at all jazz camps, because often when I'm working with students, if they're not getting things together rhythmically, the first question I ask them is, do you all dance? Raise your hand if you dance. And most times nowadays, not a lot of students raise their hands. It's because, technology has been great in some respects and not so great in others. It's kind of like a catch-22. But I ask the students if they dance. I said, pretend like you're dancing. Have you ever danced? Whether it was to pop music or to jazz, whether it was, a waltz. The music, you dance to the feel of the music. And even when I was in high school, when we went to a dance or a hop, I don't think they say hop anymore. But when we went to a dance, it's like, oh, that's my song. Something about the song made you move, whether it was Parliament Funkadelic, Earth, Wind, and Fire, whether it was Duke Ellington or Thelonious Monk. If that was the dance music of your time, something about the music made you move, and it was the rhythm. So, so when I'm trying to get kids to learn how to play, I ask them, do they dance? And so incorporating dance into the camp, where you have great dance instructors, and they can play the music of swing, which is what the kids are learning, which is a large part of their repertoire during the camp. It's one of the greatest things that I think that you can do. And I've tried to incorporate, because I took a couple of swing dance lessons when we did a tour. I was out with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, as it was called during that time, and we had a swing dance tour. And doing something like Swinging with the Duke, it does something to the music, because it's one goes hand in hand with the other. The dancers are dancing, that encourages you to play a certain way. When you see somebody moving to the music that you're playing, and even when there's no dancing going on, I'm always thinking about dancing. How can I make these rhythms jump out the horn? Bop the baby dee doo. I'm thinking about dancing, and sometimes I'm probably bouncing when I'm playing, if it's feeling good. But to get kids to incorporate that feeling into what they're playing, I think it's great for them to take a dance lesson. And even though they learn the formal steps, I think it's good to just, go and dance. And I'll tell them sometimes, put on Duke Ellington's Take the A Train or Rockabye River, or just put on some swing, put on some funk, put on, one thing that my brothers and sisters would do during the family reunion or Christmas holidays, after everybody's gone and we're just amongst ourselves being silly, we have what we call a silly dance contest. And what we'll probably do, we'll put on some music. It may start out with some funk. It may start out with jazz. It may be a classical piece of music. But the thing is to just do something to dance to the music. It's all improvised. For the most part, it's silly. We're trying to make each other laugh. But you get some pretty interesting moves, and it's kind of crazy. So I encourage kids to even do that. Just dance. You don't want to dance in front of anyone. You don't know how to dance. You may be shy. Put on some music, and just try to dance by yourself. And I know that's a long answer to your question, but to incorporate dance, I think that can be used as a model for all jazz camps, to make all the musicians dance. Because when I think about the cast that played with Count Basie's band or Duke Ellington's band, sometimes what's his name? Ray Nance would come down dancing to the mic, and you see him dance, you're like, he dances like a professional dancer. But back in the day, cats, if you played swing, you could dance swing. The musicians could dance. So I think it's a great thing to bring that back, or to it's never gone, not to bring it back, but to incorporate it so that we can educate the kids and educate the kids on that aspect of the music, and they can incorporate that into their playing. If they create that feeling, if you feel like you want to dance, if you can play the music and make it danceable, people will pat their feet, they'll bob their heads, and they'll want to dance, and that's creating successful swing music. Well, let's see. I think my education through experience with the Wynton Marsalis Septet was my growing up in music. It was my first true, real professional job, and I grew so much in that situation after I left college and got the opportunity to play with the band. And each individual in the band had something that they offered, not just from the standpoint of playing the instruments, but just, to hang with Wes, to hang with, Reginald Ville, Hurlin, Eric Reed after Marcus Roberts left. They brought something to the bandstand that Winton was never afraid to utilize, and that's every aspect of one's musical experience. Most all of us grew up in church, so we had that in common, and you would hear that not on stage, but after the sound check or on the bus. But before we head down the road, somebody start singing a hymn or something, and then you just fall in. We'd laugh about it, but there was a kinship in that kind of experience that most people don't get a chance to see. So it was almost like being at home, with your family. So when we play together, I think the septet disbanded at the end of 1994, and when Winton told us about 6 months before he's going to concentrate really on working with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. The Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra was called back then, and we all had those jobs, but the experience musically playing in the band was unparalleled to any. Even though that was my first and foremost experience, even after no longer playing with the band and playing with other guys, musicians. I never played with musicians that could play every style of jazz. Most of them wanted to play bebop and what they considered to be hip. And oftentimes, when you're playing New Orleans music, they're like, even with young kids in colleges and universities that I've taught, they're like, that's that old jazz. That's that, But what we played was everything. We played the history of the music. And when I first got in the band, I knew New Orleans jazz. I didn't really know bebop. So I had to get on it so that I could catch up and try to keep up with the band. But the cats in the band were so, welcoming. To play with Hurlin Riley, I think the best way I can put it is when I'm playing with those cats, I feel safe. You know what I mean? It's like, if you are in a situation and it's like even in music you get lost out there, because sometimes they go into their craziness. It's like somebody playing in 5, somebody playing in 7, somebody's playing in 3, and you got 4 different people playing in 4 different times. And then when it comes back home, well, what that does for the audience is like, oh, I don't really know what just happened, but now we're back. We're back on the road, and it's a good feeling. But at the same time, if they start doing that and you get lost, we listen to each other, and they can kind of tell if I'm out there, I'm about to go off the ledge, and then Hurlin would do something, or Ville would do something, and be like, bam, here you go, I got you. They'll get me and pull me back in, and we'll talk about it. We may laugh about it, but that whole experience musically, again, it was unparalleled. We played everything from New Orleans jazz to big band music to bebop to Burnout, things that Winton was writing. We covered the gambit of music. So pretty much when the band disbanded, we were ready to go into any situation and work. I mean, it was like a complete and thorough music education for one. But again, when we talking about Louis Armstrong, well, that's the music side. Then there's that other human side. When you were cats, you felt like you're out on the road with your brothers. Like if something went down, they had your back. And there's nothing like playing with musicians like that, because you can always show up for the gig and play the gig, get paid and do this. But when we come together, I think the last time we met at Winton's house, like when I saw Hurlin the other night, it was just like, I knew most of the people from here, but it was just like, that was 25 years ago, but that feeling is still there. So when we play with each other, it's like, we were just in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and every night that feeling comes back. There's nothing that really feels like that. I mean, when you grown up in a situation, you can work a gig, but I imagine it's like the cats that played with Duke, that stayed with him for 20, 30, 40 years. It must be the same thing. So even though we don't see that much, we don't see each other often, we stay in touch. You hear from everybody on birthdays. They always ask about how the kids doing. I mean, we were there through marriages, divorces, birthdays. We celebrated things. We We used to play basketball, football. I mean, it was really like a family. And most of the time, even after cats began to get married, we were with each other more than we were with our family. So we kind of had to have that kind of thing, and it was truly like a family because we didn't always get along either, but we always got through it. So the 2 or 3 hours that the public would see us on stage at night, it was really a culmination of all of those other things that would take place. You know, the hours on the road, us getting along, not getting along, and, dealing with the sound check, the food wasn't good here, it was great. And I remember particularly one tour that we did in this house on this morning. That was the best food tour ever. We played at all churches, and all of the food was home cooked. I mean, you talking about happy. We look forward to the meals after the sound check, and it was just like we dealt with all those church people. It was just it was great. Sometimes I still get full when I think about it because I do miss it, and I think I'm always, when I'm playing now, I always try to create that feeling of that kind of feeling that I would have. It's like the feeling that I always still get when I listen to Louis Armstrong sing or watch him on the screen playing. It's just like to look at him now because I'm so familiar with his work. It's like I can just see a picture and I just feel good. When somebody does that, and I think that if you can create that in a performance, or you even get close to creating that in a performance, then the performance is successful. It goes beyond, well, did I play all my notes right? Did I get all the changes? It's cool if you do that. But if you can reach the people, then, that's the thing that makes what we're doing worthwhile. And Louis Armstrong carried that around the world, no matter where he went. And even when he wasn't happy, always happy about some things, because I've heard some of the tapes. He used to make tapes of himself, record himself, when he was working on his book and whatnot, and he'd talk about this and that, and he was really speaking what was on his mind. But when he hit the stage, he brought everybody together in a way, like no other. And if I can create a percentage of that, I'm good. So.